30 years ago, a lot of people said they were never going back to baseball. And yet, seeds were planted for what has become the modern game.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Today's episode is brought to you by good friends at 5 Hour Energy. Enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for two to any golf tournament in the United States. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and for entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament. Ends October 31st, 2025. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, whatever it's called these days, and on Instagram. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. But the best way to get a hold of us is right here on the YouTube channel. And be sure to leave that great hashtag Everyday Sully. It helps us find you. It helps us find some of your comments and everything like that as we do some of our viewer questions episodes. Before we get on to me looking back at 30 years ago and seeing what happened and some of the groundwork for modern baseball and some of the lessons we could learn as baseball is possibly staring into the abyss of yet another crisis, let's go over the trivia question. The trivia question was, where it was? Here it is. Who was the first pitcher for an American League expansion team to earn a postseason victory? We did for overall expansion teams on the other day, but who was the first pitcher for an American League expansion team to earn a postseason victory? GRT Hughes on Twitter, whatever it's called now, I got it correct. It was Paul Splittorff. Won Game 2 of the 1976 American League Championship Series as a member of the Kansas City Royals. Baseball had all sorts of crises that happen, every few years. It kind of reminds me of that Clemens and the Godfather saying every few years you got to have a war. Baseball faces a crisis every few years, and there's sometimes it's a scorched earth, and sometimes horrible things happen, but baseball is resilient. It comes back because it's ingrained in our culture, it's ingrained in who we are, and ultimately it's too fun to completely give up on. And this is going to be this weekend, this Saturday, tomorrow is going to be the 30th anniversary of Cal Ripken breaking Lou Gehrig's record for consecutive games played. And that took place in 1995 in the wake of the strike of 1994 that killed the World Series that year and the lockout of that spring training, which led to replacement players and almost would have ended Ripken's streak, because if baseball teams fielded a replacement player rosters instead of strike busting replacement player rosters like the NFL did in the late 1980s, if they actually pulled that off in 1995, that would have technically ended Cal Ripken's consecutive game streak. The Orioles would have played a game without Cal Ripken. The Ripken game where he broke Gehrig's record has been frequently pointed to as one of the first moments where baseball began its recovery. And I think there's some truth to that. It was a feel-good baseball moment. It was a moment that a lot of people started to remember and go, this is why we like baseball. I remember watching the game at a friend's apartment in 1995 in New York, and I was watching the game, and there was a couple other people there who were not big baseball fans. And even they were getting into it because that's the effect that baseball has. And I do believe that there is truth to Ripken was one of the first big moments that brought people back in 1995. And I also think there's some truth that the home run chase, the preview for the home run chase of 1997, which was between McGuire and Griffey, and finally the massive chase of which both McGuire and Sosa passed Maris in 1998 for Milli Vanilli reasons. We know that it isn't looked upon as legit these days, but at the time, everyone loved it. It brought people back, and baseball never returned the money. That sent baseball into a new renaissance. But I think there's an interesting thing that when you can get perspective and when you can get a sense of, for the lack of a better word, a little bit of distance, and you can look at what has happened to baseball over these decades, and it shatters my mind that it's been 30 years, that the groundwork of a lot of positive things in terms of baseball fandom, in terms of what we now just take for granted, in terms of enjoyment of baseball, were all planted in 1995. And a lot of what is currently modern day baseball, and for an entire generation, maybe two generations, you can point to the success of the 1995 season, which was looked upon as a failure at its time because of the anger over the strike. But I think now, with a little bit of distance, we can see that baseball really recovered and lay the foundation for its great renaissance, and also give us some tips for its survival. Baseball has a illusion that it's timeless, that the past, present, and future happen simultaneously. But 1995 had seismic changes, and perhaps as baseball is, and Major League Baseball is facing a potential new crisis looming with the collective bargaining agreement and an inevitable lockout, which I think is beyond stupid. They can learn a little bit of what happened in 1995 to maybe avoid some of these mistakes that they made in the past, and learn how to adapt, survive, and show that baseball's resiliency in many ways is its greatest quality. Need a boost to power through the day without reaching for another cup of coffee or an energy drink? That's where Zippix caffeine toothpicks come in. Instead of the crash you get from sugary drinks, Zippix gives you a clean, convenient burst of caffeine anytime, anywhere. And if you're looking for that nicotine satisfaction, they've got Zippix nicotine toothpicks as well. I've got one right in there right now. Now look at, I've used caffeine toothpicks before, big meetings, long drives, before I have to teach a class, get me a toothpick, boom. Gives me an extra edge without the jitters. They're pocket size, they're discreet, and even have this fun little container right there to keep your toothpicks there at all time. And the flavors are legit, like peppermint, my favorite, watermelon ice, spearmint, my second favorite. It's not just energy, they actually taste good. You ready to try them? Go to zippixtoothpicks.com and use promo code locked on for 10% off your first order. That's zippixtoothpicks.com, promo code locked on. Zippix toothpaste, energy, focus, anytime you need it. I was 23 years old, just out of college, just graduated, got my undergrad degree from NYU. I was not at my best. Wasn't my best year. But baseball went through a terrible strike, obviously. And when it canceled the 94 World Series, a lot of people were like, I'm never watching baseball again. Never. I mean, I've heard so many people say that then. I'm never watching it. They've lost me. They're awful, blah, blah, blah. I never said that. Never occurred to me. In fact, when the baseball season started up again, partly because of future Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, who ruled against baseball and Major League Baseball and basically ordered the end of the lockout. The baseball season began in mid-April of 1995, and your pal Sully was there opening day at Yankee Stadium. Now, people got angry. Attendance dipped. People booed the players and everything like that. I never did, because I wanted baseball to come back, and baseball came back. I understood. I'm not stupid. I understood the anger. I also never understood why people were against the players. Yes, I know the players went on strike, But I never trusted the owners. The owners colluded. The owners did all sorts of terrible things. And I still don't believe the owners. I still don't trust them. They've given us zero reason to trust them, even though it's almost an entirely new group of owners. But I digress. People stayed away. People said baseball is going to be dead. People said that, oh, I'm never going to return to the game. I remember during the Sosa McGuire chase in 1998, I bumped into a couple of friends of mine who were completely on, I'm never following baseball again. And they were saying, oh my God, did you see the McGuire home run? Did you see the Sosa home run? And I said, oh, I thought you weren't going to watch baseball anymore. I never said that because I knew I wanted it back. Yes, there was a lot of anger. And obviously, there were some horrible effects that took place in the wake of the strike of 94, the lockout in 95. The Montreal Expos never recovered. And the death of the Expos is eerily similar to what's happening to the A's right now. Eerily similar. And the death on the vine that was allowed to happen on Major League Baseball's watch. And there was no reason to have it be so long and so pronounced and so needlessly just cruel to their fans. Now, Montreal lost their team. The team eventually found a new home and success in Washington, where they won the World Series. I hope the A's find success wherever they wind up, even if it is in Las Vegas with Fisher, even though I don't trust Fisher any further. Throw him. I digress. The Expos are obviously the biggest casualty of the 1995, 94 strike and the 95 lockout. So is Buck Showalter. Buck Showalter was a huge a victim of that because he had the Yankees looking like they were going to be probably a pennant winner for the first time since 1981. Instead, the plug was pulled on that, and by the time they got to the World Series, the car keys were handed to Joe Torre. But so many positive things happened in 1995 that lay down the groundwork for brand new fans. For the first time, really since the late 50s, Cleveland fans had something to cheer for. Now, they did during 94. They were contenders in 94. They moved out of the municipal stadium, Cleveland Stadium by the lake, and they moved into what was then called Jacobs Field. And the fans loved the new stadium and loved the new team. And they had their hearts broken when the plug was pulled from the season. But the team that emerged in 1995, and I know people who were from Cleveland during that time, that team there'll be no Cleveland baseball team loved like that team, that they came firing out of the gate. Albert Bell, who should have won the MVP that year, and Kenny Lofton, and Carlos Baerga, and Jim Tomei, and Manny Ramirez, and Eddie Murray, and Charles Nagy, and Jose Mesa, and Omar Vizquel. I'm not saying they were all good people. I'm just saying that the place was jumping. I went to a game in 1995 in Cleveland. It was electric, and fans came to that stadium, and old timers who could remember the days of the days of Bob Feller, or even like the Andre Thornton and Joe Carter, finally had something to cheer for. And for young Cleveland fans, and for even teenagers and everything, were like, I've never occurred to them to be a Cleveland fan. For the Indians, that's what they were called then, suddenly became massive fans. And that groundwork was laid down. An entire generation of young Indian fans had a reason to root for them. Also, Seattle, the epitome of the hapless franchise, formed in 77, had only one or two, they didn't have a winning season until 1991, had nothing really to cheer for except for the emergence of Ken Griffey Jr., and were on the verge of moving constantly. Suddenly had a team that out of nowhere overtook a really good Angels team, won a one-game playoff, and had one of the most thrilling postseason series in the history of baseball, which was the series against the Yankees, where Ken Griffey Jr. basically had his coming out party with 5 home runs in the series and racing home on the Edgar Martinez double down the line. Also, Randy Johnson showed off what a great star he was, and Edgar Martinez wasn't too bad either. Suddenly, all the fans of the Pacific Northwest, you never had baseball fans in the Pacific Northwest have anything to cheer for in Major League Baseball until that year. You had decades of complete futility in Cleveland until that year. And for those fans there, for two sections of fan bases who had no reason to cheer for baseball, had a reason to cheer. And the groundwork was laid there in 95. I'll tell you another team. This sounds weird. I lived in New York. The Yankees hadn't been to the playoffs since 1981. They had the 94 season stolen from them, but the Bronx was dead for a while. When I arrived in New York in 1990, it was easy to get Yankee tickets. This was the Kevin Moss, Jesse Barfield, Roberto Kelly years, and Mike Witt pitching for them, Stump Merrill being the manager. There was a lot of empty seats at Yankee Stadium. There was a lot of room to put your coat here, your hot dog there, and kick your feet up because nobody was going to the games. And there was still talk about moving the Yankees, maybe to Manhattan, maybe to New Jersey. And a generation had come around without seeing a single postseason game. If you were a teenager living in New York, you don't remember 1981. So the idea of seeing a Yankee playoff game was a novelty. And I was there, and it was rocking when Jim Leyritz hit that home run in one of the greatest postseason games I've ever seen. And of course, the Yankees then experienced heartbreak. And for those fans, they got a quick kick in the groin, which was, south the next year with the arrival of Joe Torre. But for Yankee fans and New York fans to have the excitement of the Bronx is back, that groundwork was laid out in 1995. You saw great home run feats. Albert Bell, Mo Vaughn had his fabulous year, and there was a reason to go to games in Boston. The Braves obviously continued their great run. But then there was another player. And let's not forget the impact that he had. Hideo Nomo arrived in 1995. And with that, Japan began to have its effect felt in Major League Baseball for the first significant time. Japanese players were kind of this strange other world. Japan was kind of like Spinal Tap, that our sex farm is on the charts in Japan, so let's go to Japan to earn some money. If you're an aging slugger, all right, you're going to pull a Warren Cromartie and go to play in Japan for a year or so and pick up a few $1 million. And there were players there, but were they good enough to make it in Major League Baseball? We weren't sure. And prejudices persisted. And then Hideo Nomo found a couple of loopholes, got out of the stranglehold of the Japanese league, and arrived in Los Angeles. And let's not downplay how huge he was. Was it as big as Fernando Mania? No, but it may have been as significant in a different way. The first break of players coming from Japan was the excitement of Nomo. He pitched very well. He had this sort of cool quality with that weird, wild pitching motion he had. His manager was Lasorda, so there was the parallel when Lasorda was the manager of Fernando. Now Lasorda is the manager of Hideo Nomo. The team made it to the playoffs. But here's the other thing. Baseball saw the money. They saw that people in Japan were staying up late or waking up early to watch Nomo pitch, and all those stands were filled to the rim. He packed the stadium in Cincinnati for his lone playoff start that year, which didn't go very well, but it was still packed because they wanted to see Nomo pitch. And with Nomo came the arrival of first several other pitchers, and then eventually the arrival of Ichiro and Hideki Matsui, and finally of Shohei Ohtani. That doesn't start until the seeds of Nomomania were planted. And the other thing, it was the first year of the wild card. Now, technically 94 was, but the plug was pulled. And the threat of the strike loomed over that whole season. And now we got to see how a wild card could come about. How a second place team, and traditionalists like myself were, but immediately when I saw how it worked out, and you saw how the Mariners and Yankees series was the highlight of the postseason. All due respect to what was a very good World Series. You saw that, oh, wait a minute. Not only could the wild card work, and teams that you're not expecting could wind up make the playoffs, but also that great sense of, oh, we're going to follow. I got to follow how Colorado's doing. I got to follow how the Cubs are doing. The weird combination of teams, not just in your division. By the way, Colorado had fans who went to go see the games in the first year at Coors Field. And of course, it was bananas, but that team made the playoffs, and a whole generation of Denver fans had something to root for. A lot of groups of fans had their first reason, if not ever, then certainly for a long time, to be interested in baseball. Yes, it exploded in 98, but the seeds were planted in 1995. And as baseball stares into the abyss in what is going to be a potentially damaging and needlessly insane lockout that is looming, they can learn a little from some things. And we're going to talk about that. But first, I need to talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing with our listener survey. Now, we want to hear from you here at Locked On. We put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcasts even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. So go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes the survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. So thanks so much for helping us out. All right. Let's talk about 5-hour energy. It's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-hour energy transfusion. The great ginger and lime flavored shot brings the iconic taste of a golf course favorite to a non-alcoholic boost. Perfect for sinking birdies or making great moments with friends. It's a hole-in-one for the energy game. Whether you're out on the course or just need a little extra push to get through your day, 5-hour energy transfusion delivers the clubhouse flavor you love without ever leaving the green. Now, golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors. The great ginger lime flavor of 5-hour energy transfusion gives you the best part of your clubhouse go-to without leaving the course or chasing down the bev cart. Now you can amp up and have more fun. Just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for two to any golf tournament in the USA. Tee up that trip. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes the Masters tournament. Ends October 31st, 2025. You know, it's funny. 1995 was also around the time the internet started to show up in our homes. But at the time, the biggest way we consumed our baseball was on television, and ESPN was king, was ruled sports, and did a fabulous job on following you being able to follow baseball. Now, baseball did drop the ball a little bit on how they did the postseason that year. They tried to create something called the Baseball Network, which was a combination of ABC and NBC carrying the games simultaneously. All the games would be played at once in the playoffs so they could have them all in prime time. Unfortunately, it didn't take into account that people live in different regions. I lived in New York and I want to see the Red Sox. Now, I think baseball should probably do something like that now. I think all the baseball playoff games should be played at prime time or at like 5 o'clock local time. 5 o'clock here in LA, or maybe 4 o'clock here in LA. Every team plays at 4 o'clock in LA, which is 7 o'clock on the East Coast. And if you have all the wild card series games, you can have them available. We have enough cable channels. You have them all available starting at the same time. That's what I would do. They'd get better TV ratings and blah, blah, blah. But baseball had a huge crisis because of greed, because of collusion, because of dishonest owners and mistrust. And all the same talking points that are being said now were said then. Well, you know, the big teams get to buy everyone, and there's too much of it. the gulf between the biggest payroll and the smallest payroll, dot, 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 dot. Of course, in the 1990s, you saw teams like Toronto and Oakland and Pittsburgh and Cincinnati and Atlanta all emerge as big teams, while the Mets and the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Dodgers struggled. But we heard the same argument. It's the big teams, same big teams every year. Now we're seeing we've gone on a stretch where 19 different teams made it to the World Series over a 20-year span. But we still get to hear people say things like, well, it's always the same teams every year, which is factually untrue. And yet, we have to listen to the same old talking points. But how did baseball manage to survive? They did so doing something counterintuitive. Now, baseball harkened back to its past. People always looked at the Ripken event, and it made us feel a sense of timelessness in baseball. It didn't try to do something new. It invoked a good feeling, found a great hero, and linked it back to the past. It's important to do that because that's part of the appeal of baseball. Suddenly we're talking about Lou Gehrig, and you got to see Joe DiMaggio and Frank Robinson show up to the Cal Ripken game when he passes it. So we realize we're still floating along this river, and it is important that you have that timeless quality in baseball. It's important that we say, wait a minute, we're all on this journey. We were floating down the river of baseball, like Huckleberry Finn on the raft going down, and basically saying, yes, we're all in the same, we're following the same game, we're in the same history, and all is well and beautiful. That's an important illusion to continue, and at the same time to adapt. So they were able to reach back and find that link to the past, but they also found a way to adapt the game to the future. They created the expanded playoffs. The wild card existed for the first time. That was a brand new thing. And I'm quick to trash Bud Selig, but that happened under his watch. And you got to give credit where credit is proverbially due. And they also, if they realized they were losing some fans and some fans were not going to come back, well, let's find new ones. You're not going to come back. We're going to find people who will. Not even come back, show up for the first time. There are a lot of pockets of people and cities and populations that have lost interest in baseball, that if you work hard to reignite their interest, I'm looking at you, Pittsburgh. I'm looking at you, Miami. I'm looking at you, potential expansions in Nashville and wherever else. Maybe you, Las Vegas, prove me wrong. Some of the moribund franchises, we can go clear. Maybe Tampa Bay can finally find its permanent home and find the fan base, which is as unlikely an occurrence as Seattle and Cleveland drawing big crowds. But that's exactly what happened in 1995. And seeing cities that you would expect to be big champions have a reason to wake up. I'm looking at you, Chicago. I'm looking at you, Boston. I'm looking at you, St. Louis. Reviving fans or finding new ones, connecting to the past and adapting. Baseball adapted to the expanded playoffs and embracing cable television when cable television was king. Now the internet's king. You got to get rid of these blackout restrictions. You got to make sure you put the team in front of the fans. You're seeing things like how the MLB app is the price is being jacked up. No. We got to get this in front of people and lay down the groundwork for new fans and the new seeds that were planted. And find the new markets where a star can come from. Came from Japan in 1995. How about refocusing the energy in America, in inner cities, and try to tap into the African American market here, who baseball has basically neglected for generations, and find the stars that are going to get a new audience who may not have the connection that they have now, but realize when they jump into the river, that there are great stars of the past and the present and the future to connect with and relate to. And remember, this game is open for everybody. Baseball is basically saying full speed ahead into that tree. It nearly destroyed the game in the mid 1990s, but it rebounded through adaptation, through realizing you need the nostalgia, but you need to adapt. You need to bring back the old fans, but you need to find some new ones. You need to revive the old markets, but also find there may be some people you don't even realize are there. That's how they won. And baseball, a few years after everyone said we're never coming back, broke attendance records, broke viewership records, built new stadiums, revenues shot up. The sort of things at the beginning of 1995, when baseball came back, the consensus was the sport is dead. And here we are 30 years later. Learn. The best thing you do is avoid the lockout altogether. But if it's going to happen, there is a recipe of how to survive. So bring us to today's trivia question. What team was the first ever to draw 2 million fans in a season? Write your answer right down here on the YouTube page. The first team to draw 2 million for one season. Talking about the impending lockout and how we already have ideas of how to survive it. If you look back 30 years ago this Saturday, Ripken passed Gehrig, and we connected to the past while adapting to the future. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.